Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Wokeish podcast. This is Ebony.
And this is Zelma.
And Happy New Year.
Yes.
Welcome to our new season.
Yes,
Woo!
Season 2, yes.
Yeah, we had a break.
Yes.
And, well, we had a break from the podcast, but not from life.
Yeah. We both have big news. We both have big things happening.
Yeah, so what happened with you, Zelma?
So as you guys have heard, if you guys have been listening weekly, I've been pregnant for the past 9 months.
For
most of
year?
Yeah, I know, right? For most of the podcast, and so I had the baby December 16th. And I took about the month off the last episode, that a couple of days later, I had the baby.
Yeah.
So, good timing.
Yeah, very good.
So have a baby. It was healthy. I'm actually going to talk about my experience and what's being slept on, because I learned a lot. I'm doing well. Baby's doing well. Definitely, was a much needed month-long break, but I'm happy to be back and happy to see that some of you guys went back to listen to our old episodes. But we're back, and so with this new season, hopefully we'll be able to just continue having these conversations with you guys.
Yeah, good vibes only.
Yeah, and what happened with you, Ebony?
I got engaged.
Woo!
Yeah, woo! So, lots of things cooking over the break. At the end of 2018, we exited 2018 with a bang.
Yes.
If y'all have some interesting things or some, things that you want to shout out as we enter into this new year, like we always said last year, send your shout outs our way.
Yeah.
Email them, DM them, all those things. We did have a lot of activity over the break. We had some emails, most of them weird.
We got a couple weird ones.
Yeah, so if y'all just want to send us something not weird, or even if you want to send us something weird, you can. Yeah. We are here to read.
Yeah, we read them, so yes.
We read them. We may not reply because they're weird, but
we will read them.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and dive into our shout-out segment. So
our first shout-out goes to Regina King for winning the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress for If Beale Street Could Talk. I actually watched the Golden Globes this year because I'm at home a lot now with, having a baby. You can't really leave the house in the beginning. So I watched the Golden Globes. She brought her son with her to the awards, and she gave him a shout out. And it was really great. And it's just really great to see Regina King recognized, because I follow her and she does so. If you just go Google her and see how much shit she's been in a lot of shit for a lot of stuff. And so it was really nice for her to be recognized for Best Supporting Actress. So shout out to Regina King. Definitely, I can't wait to watch the movie. But just from her past work that I've seen and all the other stuff that she's been in, she's phenomenal, and shout out to her. And finally, the last thing that she did that I thought was great is she made a promise to hire more women in the projects that she does. So, really proud of her. Yeah, she's an amazing actress. Like, she's been in some... Like that whole, did you watch American Crime? Yeah,
oh
the one that, she's really good. Yeah. So our next shout out goes to Marseille. Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah.
Marseille Martin. And if you don't know her, she plays one of the twins from Baaacccckkkkk. And so she is going to be, she plays Diane. She's going to be in a movie called Little. And she also, so aside that she's, moving from TV to movies, she has become the youngest executive producer at 14 years old. Apparently, she loved the movie Big, which is what this movie is based off of, where it's like the reverse. It's a little kid becomes an adult. And so in this movie, an adult becomes a little kid. Yeah. And so she said that she loved that movie, and so she thought it would be a really great idea. And so she becomes, she's the executive producer on this film, and she's only 14. Yeah. So shout out to her, because when I was 14, I wasn't doing any shit. Nothing impressive.
Yeah. Nothing impressive. Okay, and our last shout out goes to director Peter Ramsey, who just won a Golden Globe for the film Spider-Verse, and who could become the first Black director nominated for a feature animation Oscar. So, shout out to Peter Ramsey. I still haven't seen Spider-Verse as
Me
much
neither.
as I
you know what? I don't know
if
I'm going to see it.
I keep missing opportunities to see it, and then when I do have the opportunity to go to movies, I see something else.
Yeah.
But I've heard that it was really good.
I heard it was good, too. Yeah. We probably heard it from the same person.
Yeah, I even heard it from people that aren't into, like,
I'm not.
movies or anything about superheroes or Marvel or
nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to jump into our In the Know segment.
Extra, read all about it.
Okay, so now for our In the Know segment. So first we wanted to just mention that we are on mommy duty, and so the baby is sitting here and he might make a little noise, but that's all good. We're going to keep it rolling.
Yeah, and we could have edited it out, but Ebony and I just kind of briefly talked, and I just think it's important to just kind of highlight that a lot of what I'm learning is a lot of moms have to multitask.
Yes.
And so, for especially in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of these episodes where baby will be here with us.
Yes.
And it's just, I'm continuing to do the stuff I did before, but now I'm also caring for the baby. And so, if you hear him stirring or moving, that's baby. And we just wanted to just kind of explain that and give some background as to why we're not choosing to edit out those sounds.
Yes. Okay, so to start out, we're going to give some updates on The Wall.
I know.
Dun, dun, dun. So
shit hasn't changed since we took our break.
No, it's like this. It's still madness, and it's gotten even crazier, it seems like. So where are we now with the physical barrier between the U.S. and Mexico project? So Brian Colfage, I don't know, started a GoFundMe campaign to fund the wall 8 days before Christmas. The goal was $1 billion, or is $1 billion. So he stated, 8 days before Christmas, I started this GoFundMe campaign because I was tired of watching the U.S. government's inability to secure our southern border. Like most Americans, I know. Right? It's like so pompous. I see the porous southern border as a national security threat, and I refuse to allow our broken political system to leave my family and my country vulnerable to attack. There's that fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. So now, after being active for 1 month, this campaign has raised $20,654,565. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
From the donations of 346,726 people. So it's crazy how many issues we have in this country because of how conservative people are
with their
fiscally.
Money.
Yeah. So it's like, no, don't raise taxes for this or that. Don't raise taxes for education, which we're going to get to in a second.
Yeah.
Don't raise taxes for healthcare.
Or Flint still doesn't have clean water.
Right? And you don't want to contribute to it. You don't want to help people to survive. Mm-hmm. But you can help to raise $20 million to put a giant fence.
Yeah, a fence.
Between two countries where the boundaries that exist between us are like socially constructed in the first place. Yeah. So a bunch of white men decided, some
I don't know how long ago, hundreds of years ago, 150 years ago or so, that the United States and, no, more than 150 years ago, like 300 years ago, that the United States and Mexico were going to be two separate countries. And they invented that.
Yeah.
And now somebody has raised $20 million to solidify and put a physical barrier between us.
Yeah.
So last week, there was an announcement that the funders, so the people that contributed to this GoFundMe, would be refunded. But apparently, the thing is that if you donated before January 11th, you have to opt in by reading a message and giving your email address as confirmation. So kind of like, it's like a way of signing a contract to absolve GoFundMe of any consequences if the wall doesn't actually get built. So if you donated $200 or whatever to this fund before January 11th, and you want to confirm with GoFundMe that you acknowledge that you're giving this money to this, I think he made it a nonprofit or something like that. A 501c, I think, is a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
So he made it a nonprofit, and you, by signing this contract, are acknowledging that you are giving your money to this nonprofit, and that GoFundMe has no kind of like, they won't be held responsible if he doesn't actually get this wall built. And so if you don't opt in, your contribution will automatically get refunded after 3 months. So that's one thing. And then last week, Trump made an announcement stating that he never said or meant that Mexico would pay for the wall directly. He meant that they'd pay for it in a symbolic kind of way. Indirectly, he says that the wall will pay for itself every 3 months, directly contradicting everything he said during his campaign in the early days of his presidency. So many hypocritical conservatives have gotten behind him in this message, even though they preach fiscal conservatism.
Yes.
So it's like, how, now it's like we went from, we're going to put a wall up, make America great again, and Mexico is going to pay for this wall, to now, there's a GoFundMe going up so that y'all will pay for it, and then we're also going to make the taxpayers pay for it. So it's like whether you give to this GoFundMe or not, you're going to support
pay for it.
Yeah. If you pay taxes. Because he claims that he never meant that they were actually going to pay for it. So Trump's obsession with this wall has led him to shut down the government. Mm-hmm. He's basically throwing a tantrum to try to bully Congress into giving him what he wants.
Yeah, and so that runs into our next kind of connecting current event topic, which is the government shutdown. And so once again, the government has been shut down. And so Trump has, as everyone was saying, and this is all because of the wall. Mm-hmm. So Trump has demanded that Congress provides $5.7 billion to build more than 200 miles of new and replacement barriers along the border. Keep in mind, there has been a steady decrease of illegal immigration, and that there's evidence that shows that, crossing the wall isn't the only way that illegal immigration happens. Mm-hmm. And so, the impasse over Trump's demand for $5.7 billion for a wall at the border and the Democrats' refusal to fund it showed no sign of resolution in what is now considered the longest shutdown. And how this is affecting people, other than just it being fucking crazy that our government is like closed, is that about 800,000 federal employees from 9 federal agencies, many of them charged with border and national security, have been furloughed or are working without pay. President Donald Trump signed a bill providing back pay to federal employees affected by the ongoing partial government shutdown, the White House announced Friday. So this is kind of their way of being like, no, like, we're going to take care of these people. So he signed the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act. He always finds a way to make them sound really good. Right. Of 2019, which the White House said requires the compensation of government employees for wages lost, work performed, or leave used during a lapse in appropriations that begin on or after December 22nd, which is when the shutdown started, and entitles accepted employees to use leave during a lapse in appropriations. However, the workers will not be paid until after the shutdown is over. So that still doesn't solve the main problem that a lot of federal employees are having, which is, I don't have any income coming in at this moment. And I think the shutdown it's past 20 days now. And so, I mean, I barely get, me by myself without my partner, I would barely get by on my paycheck like every 15 days. Mm-hmm. And so going 20 plus days without income.
Especially like right after Christmas.
Yeah, and with like families and like mortgages. And so if you've, been on Instagram, I've been following a lot of Congress people, like Senator Harris, who kind of retweet or show real people voicing how the government shutdown has affected them. And there are people who've had to borrow money from relatives. There are people who've had to dig into their savings. There are people who've had to go to food pantries. There are people who've had to start Ubering. And it's all because the president of the United States doesn't
care about them.
Yeah, because even the Democrats, and so a lot of people are saying, well, the Democrats should cave in and then that will fix it too. Well, what the Democrats are saying is, hey, let's continue this talk about the wall, but let's not shut the government down. And Trump is saying, no, we either have the wall or nothing.
What's the point of Congress if you can just do this?
Yeah.
Like, if the president can just do this and throw a tantrum, why is Congress even there?
Yeah.
Why do we... I mean, what do we need checks and balances for?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Like, we may as well just let him... We may as well just turn into, like, an authoritarian kind of government and let him...
It's crazy that one man who I'm 100% sure hasn't paid taxes for the last 20 years has the capacity to be able to affect... almost 1 million people. 800,000 people is a lot. And that's just federal employees.
And then if you branch out and you think about their families,
that's more
far
than 1 million
beyond,
people.
And people that are probably taking care of their parents
and they're saying, and these are going to have long-term implications. So if you don't pay your mortgage for 2 months, what happens? You get behind, and the bank can come in and start foreclosing, or if you don't pay back loans, or if you don't pay, a lot of people are having to take the children out of daycare and talk about if you don't pay daycare, you lose your spot.
And then, think about the daycare. So it's like, it affects the businesses too, because then people are not able to spend money with you, so the effects of this are so much greater than the people that it directly impacts. Like, then it goes far beyond, like, just the people that are working for the government. It's like who they spend money on every month. So if you're not able to spend money the way that you did the previous month for a 30-day period, think about all the things that you would have spent money on in that 30 days. Yeah. All of those people who you would have given money to in like a bartering kind of thing are impacted.
Yeah, and our economy itself is being impacted.
Yeah, and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to, isn't that his whole platform?
Yeah, that's what they're saying. So, I was reading some articles. You just never know. What's sad now is, like, you never know what's true. So some people close to him apparently are saying he's nervous because the economy is the one thing that he always prides himself in saying that he's making better. Because, it not only is domestically it being impacted, but like internationally, people who invest in things in the United States, what they see is an unstable government, and so they pull their money out of stocks, they pull their money out of investments, and that also causes the economy to be shaken even further. And other people are saying that no, that he's willing to just ride this out as long as he can. And I was reading,
how long?
I know. I was reading, and they say if this goes back past March, which is insane to think that there could be a government shutdown for 3 months.
Like, what are people gonna do?
Yeah, they're saying that our economy may not be able to recover.
Yeah, and like we are already on the brink of a recession. Like, that's already happening. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's already happening, and so all you're doing is expediting it.
Yeah, like the housing market was not doing as well. People weren't able to, and now people are definitely not going to be able to buy houses because people are, if the government isn't open, then, I'm glad that I was able to get my baby's freaking birth certificate before this happened. But like, you just don't, there's just so many things, so many small things that you just don't think about. Like the airport, there are TSA workers that are not going to work because they are not getting paid. And so the lines are a lot longer. And if you're talking about safety, and the whole reason for the wall is to make the freaking country safer. Well, when you have less people checking to make sure that people aren't bringing contraband onto airplanes, you're making the country less safe. So I don't know. This is not the first government shutdown that we've had. If you recall, the previous one has been about DACA. But this time, it's now, we're not hitting the longest shutdown in the history of the country.
And the thing is like, what kind of really irritates me, and I don't know this to be fact, but I could imagine, that Donald Trump gets off on this. He wants to have a legacy like that. Oh, I had the longest shutdown. Yeah. Oh, I had the most executive orders. Oh, I had this, I had all of these things that have really detrimental consequences for the country. It doesn't matter as long as he gets some kind of like recognition from it, and I think that that's what he wants. Like, if it had not been something that Obama did, it wouldn't even occur to him. He just wants to one up everything that Obama does.
Obama did it, but I did it longer.
Yeah, exactly.
I affected more people.
Exactly.
People lost their houses.
Yo, he's crazy.
So I'm sure in our next episode next week, we will still be talking about the government shutdown and about the people impacted by it. And so, my heart goes out to all the families who are directly impacted by not being paid, because as now a parent, I can now imagine the stress and the helplessness of having a job but not having money to be able to provide, because bills don't stop because the government shut down. Like, you can't just tell coming from a family where we've had our electricity shut down, like, they don't give a shit. You can call them and tell them, oh, sorry, I had to go to the hospital. My mom had to go to the hospital this month, and so we couldn't make our payments. They don't care. They're going to shut down your electricity. And, it's just frustrating.
I'm hoping that maybe, because sometimes when there is an incident that impacts like a large group of people, it inspires like certain companies to be a little bit lenient, even if it's just so that they can get like recognition in social media, and then it drives up their business and stuff like that. Hopefully that kind of greed will help companies to have a heart. But also, apparently, we need to be vigilant with our food and the types of foods that we are consuming during the shutdown, because it's not. Inspections are.
The government. So like we're saying, there's a lot of stuff. It's so many ways that we're going to be indirectly. And they're saying that the IRS will still be able to process taxes, but we'll see what I think they'll be able to process it, but I don't think you'll be able to get your refund.
So it'll probably be slower, even if they are able to do it. So I know that people are dependent on that. And a lot of people look forward to tax season and like to their not look forward in like the symbolic way, but like actually look forward and plan on it. Yes, exactly. That's the word. Rely on it.
That money that I'm gonna get in April, I'm gonna use to pay for school, or I'm gonna use to pay for
something. And it'll be delayed. Trump doesn't care about that. That's not something that he's ever had to worry about. But
so another terrible thing in Trump's America, and we'll definitely keep you guys updated. But just this wall is I don't know. I mean, even it's beyond just whether we should have this wall or not. It's just now like it's impacting so many. It's impacting too many things, and
it's like, is this really going to be a thing? Is Donald Trump really good? Okay, so what happens if he doesn't get reelected? What happens to the wall? Does it continue to get built? Because it's going to take longer than 2 years for this to, even if the shutdown does work and then Congress caves, like the Democrats cave, and then they put in for this wall to be built. It's not going to be immediate. So if it doesn't get finished by 2020, then what? And I'm sure he's like, and I think that could be the thing. They're probably looking forward to 2020 and saying, you know what, if you don't get Congress to budge on this wall, and you made this wall the whole focus of your campaign, and you don't have at least it started by the time you have to run in 2020, he's not going to get reelected. So his reelection, because people are not going to trust him. It's going to be like, you gaslit this whole thing, and it didn't happen. So his second term is probably dependent on this.
And his ego.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's a game for them right now. It's a game for them. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so
we'll keep you updated, because I'm sure this will continue till next week.
Definitely.
So the next topic I wanted to bring up is, so for those of you that, a lot of you I know are boycotting football, but you can still, be following the news and what's happening. Mm-hmm. So the Super Bowl is going to happen in a couple of weeks, I think in 3 weeks. And, the biggest thing is always who's going to be the halftime show. And so lots of people have done the halftime shows in the past, Beyonce,
Janet
Jackson, Justin Timberlake. And so this year, they announced that Maroon 5 will be doing the Super Bowl halftime show. But they will be alongside Travis Scott and Big Boy. And so that raised some controversy, just because at this time now, a lot of the issue is, if you're performing at the Super Bowl halftime show, are you in fact kind of showing solidarity with the people who are
being complicit?
Yeah, who have been blacklisting Colin Kaepernick and kind of condemning the right for football players to be able to protest racial injustice. And so one of the things that was floating around is a story that Travis Scott actually had a conversation with Colin Kaepernick, and that Colin Kaepernick in essence gave him his quote-unquote blessing. And so earlier this week, Travis Scott was basically called a liar by exiled football player and current social justice beacon Colin Kaepernick and his girlfriend, radio personality Nessa, after a Variety report, so this is the article that was kind of floating around, claimed that Travis Scott and Kaepernick came to a mutual understanding about him performing at this year's Super Bowl halftime show. And so Nessa tweeted and said that this was absolutely not true.
So he didn't talk to him?
No, he didn't. This was fake. Yeah.
Oh,
the fact that Nessa actually, who's Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend, and she's been a huge supporter of Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Retweeted the article saying they came to a mutual understanding and respect. She said this is absolutely not true. There's no mutual understanding and no respect.
Wow.
And so I was reading an article that says if Scott wants to perform at the Super Bowl, that's his prerogative, but he should also acknowledge that his decision will be regarded as a smack in the face to everyone who is boycotting the NFL for it blackballing of Kaepernick and racist stifling of players protesting systemic injustice. There's no amount of positive PR that will help him or Big Boy or any other black musician to look any better in this situation. And so I have not heard yet Travis Scott say anything. One, if it wasn't true, Travis Scott should have said, no, I didn't talk to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, he should have just left it alone. Why would you lie?
He left it for Colin Kaepernick and Nessa to actually have to say, no, this actually didn't happen. So I think, one, that's already... Aside from Travis Scott, which is hard because, I don't hate Travis Scott, but, there's also the whole stigma of he's dating a Kardashian, and black men that are associated with dating Kardashians typically aren't always on the racially, proactive side, and kind of quote unquote people argue that they forget that they're black. And so Travis Scott recently has just started getting a lot of fame, and his most recent album went #1. He's been a rapper for a while, but he's gotten recently more popular. A lot of people argue it's because he's associated with Kylie Jenner, who is one of the most famous people in the world. But so strike one is the fact that he's doing the halftime show. Strike two is that there's apparently this fake article about him talking to Kaepernick and getting his blessing.
So wait, I'm confused.
Not speaking against it.
Did he actually say he did, or did they just...
Someone else, another article said that like a source told them that Travis and Colin Kaepernick talked, but Travis did not say, like,
he didn't denounce
it and say that's not true, and
Gotcha.
had left it for Colin's camp to do it. And so I was actually happy that they did that, because a part of me was like, what? Kaepernick, you're giving him the pass? Like, that's not cool. And so so a lot of people are saying he's a sellout, and I think he definitely is a sellout, and I think he should, people are saying it's money, it's
it's definitely,
he's getting they're saying that, when Missy Elliott was featured in a halftime show, her streams rose up so much after, and like that same it's gonna happen to Travis Scott, and this is gonna be really good for him. And it's like, sometimes selling out gives you short-term benefits, but in the long run, like the symbolism of them getting these two black musicians to participate in the halftime show there's a lot of people looking at that, and it means a lot of things. And so I definitely think it's a sellout move.
Isn't Kanye like one of his like... And so it's like, I feel like
Kanye's
that's probably how he's looking at it. It's like, well, I mean, Kanye said that slavery was a choice, and look at what happened for his streams, and look at how he was all in like the media and everything, and he's probably seeing that as like goals, and so he's thinking about the money, but he's also probably thinking about the clout and the fact that his name is gonna be in everybody's mouth for the next whatever. And so when we talk about sellouts, we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about him and Kanye. So we're going to have them in the same conversation. And so now when you talk about Colin Kaepernick or NFL or Super Bowl, you're going to also be talking about Travis Scott. Yeah. And that's what's important to them. I mean, if he's learning anything from his baby mom, it's like, this is, you know how to stay in the spotlight.
Yeah. I mean, even if he doesn't want... And I know a lot of people might argue, and I've heard a lot of celebrities say, well, I'm not a role model. I'm not everything I do is supposed to mean something, or not everything is a stand. And it's like, I'm sorry, but it is a stand. Yeah. And so, especially when it's like, you've got to be living under a rock if you don't know that that football is associated. Like, there's this thing with Colin Kaepernick that is rooted in even the freaking president has had his input in what the kneeling means, and the punishing of the football players who do this. And I think it's a huge slap in the face, and it's a bigger slap in the face to Colin Kaepernick to not denounce that this story was false, and to make some people believe for a little bit that Colin Kaepernick would in fact someone performing during for an organization that's basically persecuted him.
Yeah, he should maybe he should like give the money, like that would be a good
I think I read another article that said that Travis said that, I think it was in the same article, that the reason why Colin Kaepernick okayed it is because Travis Scott said that the money he got was going to go to a charity.
Yeah, I think that he should do that. Like maybe he should donate the money for like CTE research or something like that.
Unless he's up there and he fucking kneels and has a banner that says, uses that time to be like, okay, I'm gonna be, live, and people are gonna see me, and I'm gonna use this as a chance to highlight racial injustice, wearing a t-shirt that says, I support Cap, I'm with Cap, then maybe you'll win me back.
Maybe his fellow Houstonian, his good sis Beyonce, who also performed at the Super Bowl, will reach out to him and say, look, this is how you need to do it. You see how I went all militant, full out Black Panther when I came out there? That's what you need to do too. And so hopefully that happens, because I'm sure that they'll probably reach out to him at some point and say like, hey Travis, like we, the Carters, they don't really F with your people over there, your Kardashians and your Wesses, but we're gonna help you because you're in a sunken
young,
place.
And he may not really understand the implications of what this is.
They're going to pull him out the sunken place.
Yeah, he may just see this as a really good thing. Because, it is a good thing to be, like, asked to do the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But you also got to take into account what this means for your community.
Social
because
context.
The community that he comes from is looking at him with disappointment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on to our last in the know topic. So today makes day 5 that LAUSD teachers have been on strike. So LAUSD is the Los Angeles School District. Teachers have, I'm sure that you've seen this in the news, and the teachers have different motives and demands for striking. So one teacher said that salary isn't on the top of her list. But she said that her students need the district to pay for a nurse every day, and they need a lower student to counselor ratio. So class size and staffing are also core issues, in addition to, like salary-based things and like teachers needing to be paid more. So the LA Times reports that attendance at schools Thursday was the lowest yet during the strike, with about 17% of students showing up to school. LA Unified receives state funding, its largest source of revenue, based on attendance. So you can see how this is kind of problematic. Yeah. Officials estimated the gross loss for the day at $28.1 million.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, it's crazy, but offsetting that somewhat is the fact that striking teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses are not being paid. So their pay adds up to about $10 million per day. So kind of a little bit less than the district is making up for the loss due to attendance by keeping a little less than half of the money that it pays out to employees based on the strike. So schools are being kept open, though, by skeleton staffs of administrators, substitutes, and employees who are not members of the striking union. And so the fact that, the schools are open kind of makes me feel a little bit better about this strike, because initially I wasn't sure about that, and I was like, this has like some residual impact on parents who may not be able to find, supervision for their kids and things like that. And I appreciate the teachers or the employees' willingness to skip out on being paid during this strike, to fight for things like, better teacher-student ratio, because that has like really negative impacts on student learning. Yeah. And LAUSD is one of the lowest performing school districts in the country. And it's ridiculous, and it's predominantly black and brown, and so if the parents and if the government wasn't going to do better, the teachers are showing that they're willing to be the sacrificial lambs in this process of getting better, for fighting for a better educational system, because our educational system has been in the pits for decades, and it's just been getting worse. So hopefully we see some improvements following the strike. Okay, so now we are going to jump into our What's Being Slept On segment, where we'll be talking about kind of healthcare in general, and then we'll kind of zoom in on Zelma's experience with childbirth.
Yes.
So I strongly suggest that you wake the fuck up.
Okay, so now for our What's Being Slept On segment. So we are going to be talking about healthcare, and we wanted to give a little bit of background information / an introduction to what are some of the kind of flaws of the healthcare system as it stands. So, according to a report published by The Atlantic, the Commonwealth Fund, which regularly ranks the health systems of a handful of developed countries, finds that the best countries for healthcare are the UK, the Netherlands, and Australia. And guess where the US ranks? In the lowest tier, at the bottom. Even though it spends the most money. And this has been consistent for the past 20 years. David Blumenthal, the Commonwealth Fund's president, gave 3 reasons why the U.S. ranks so low. So, number 1, a lack of insurance coverage. So, more than 27 million people in the United States were uninsured in 2006, nearly a tenth of the population, often because they live in a state that didn't expand Medicaid or are undocumented. Number 2, administrative inefficiency. So in other words, while insurance coverage in general is great, it's not ideal that different insurance plans cover different treatments and procedures, forcing doctors to spend precious hours coordinating with insurance companies to provide care. So I can attest to that firsthand, because you have, I was trying to find a new therapist, because one of my resolutions, if you listen to the last episode, was to find and go to therapy regularly. So what that requires is that the the doctors, or whatever therapist or whatever provider has to get your insurance information, and their billing department has to contact the insurance company and see if you're covered, see what your copay is, and all of these things, because it's not standard across companies. Everybody has different benefits. And then third, underperforming primary care. Blumenthal states that we have a very disorganized, fragmented, inefficient, and under-resourced primary care system. Our system is very disjointed. You have to go to a primary care provider to be referred to a specialist, and they often don't speak to one another. And they aren't on the same page. It's all over the place. And then the quality of our social services is so poor that if you are given directions from your primary care provider, like say dietary restrictions, our food quality is so trash that it might actually undo some of the work that your doctor's treatments have done. So it's not, there's no, what's that word? I forgot what the word is, but basically
consistency?
No.
Communication, correlation.
No, but those are all good words. Basically there are a lot of things in our there are a lot of things in a lot of our social systems do not allow for basically you to maintain optimum health. The doctor can refer you to one thing, but then maybe for instance, if you're continuity, there you go, that's the word. Okay, so there isn't any continuity. There's no relationship between the doctor or your primary care provider and other social systems. So a lot of times they cancel each other out. The fact that you're at the doctor in the first place is probably because of some, poor diet, inability to exercise because of your time constraints or work, or maybe you're overworked, or you don't get to, there's so many different barriers to being healthy, and a lot of them are bound within our healthcare system.
As we had said earlier in the episode, about a month ago, I had a baby, and although I do a lot of research on healthcare access and healthcare utilization, I learned the most just from my experience of labor and delivery. And so I just wanted to share 4 of the biggest things that I learned about giving birth in the U.S., given, the kind of background that Ebony talked about how the U.S. has all these resources, but yet we just do so terribly in terms of why we rank so low with healthcare. And so the first thing that I learned is, so the total for my labor and delivery was $30,000, and that's crazy. Not pregnancy cost. So I haven't even added up how much it costs to go to my OBGYN, all my prenatal vitamins, all the blood tests, all the genetic testing, all the ultrasound. And so, this $30,000 is not including the pregnancy costs. And so the first thing that I learned with the $30,000 is how insurance works. So the $30,000 is just the raw number. So if you don't have insurance, this is what you'd have to pay.
Yeah.
And so how insurance works is if you go in network, then they give you a discount. So it already takes off some of the cost. and then based on your plan and what they cover and your deductible, then, you know, you have to pay a certain percentage. But what I didn't know is that, you know, the baby needs insurance in addition to the mom. So I kind of figured everyone needs insurance, but what I didn't know is that, you know, the baby and the mom both get billed separately. So I got billed for room and board, and so does the baby. So they actually charged both of us. So, even though we were both, like, he was in his little, like, box that they put him in, and even though he was in that, like, for the 3 days, they charged him for room and board separately than
even
they did
though he
for
was
me.
in the same room as you.
Yeah, even though we were in the same room, that we both get, like, basically charged rent.
So crazy.
And he gets his own bill, and so I got my bill.
In his name?
Yes, and he has his own bill in his name. And then with that, you get charged for everything separately. And so what they do is they give you, well, for me, in my hospital, they gave me like a little barcode bracelet. And every time I asked for something, they would scan the bracelet. And so, like, when I wanted a pain medicine, they would scan my bracelet. When I got an IV, they would scan my bracelet. To get food, they would scan my bracelet. When the nurses would come by to check me, they would scan my bracelet. And at first, I didn't really know what that was. And then it clicked, and I was like, oh, this is how they keep track of cost. Mm-hmm. And then the baby has his own bracelet, too. So the baby gets scanned, too. So the baby had to have some screenings done. The baby had to have some tests run. And he got charged for those things, too. And those things go for his bill. So, you know, already at birth, you know, baby just comes out, and he's already racking up bills.
Already in debt.
Already in debt, yeah.
So crazy.
And so the second thing I learned is like paperwork. And so I remember when I went in order to get the epidural, which is like a pain medicine, when you're having your contractions, it kind of helps ease with the pain. You know, there are some side effects and potential complications that could happen because they basically are injecting pain medicine into your spine. And they had me sign like a liability waiver that was basically saying, you know, if you become paralyzed, if you die, if you have long-term effects, the hospital is not responsible. And so in the middle of my contractions, I was like reading this form and trying to sign it. And I remember like the person who comes by to help you, you know, they have a person come by with the paperwork. And she actually had to wait for one of my contractions to finish so that I could sign. Because at that point, I couldn't concentrate. And she's like, I'll wait until it passes. And then, you know, my contraction passed and I signed. And then they signed something about the baby, saying that, you know, I acknowledge that the baby's going to have all these tests done. And, you know, I mean, even looking back, I don't even remember or recall exactly everything that I signed. But I do remember thinking like, wow, I'm in the middle of giving birth and I am filling out paperwork.
Yeah.
And I had filled out paperwork before that said like my insurance information, because you have to pre-register at the hospital. So they already had my driver's license, my insurance information, my doctor's information, my pediatrician's information. They had all that stuff, but still, like, as procedures were happening and things were happening, I had to sign things. And, you know, I ended up having a C-section surgery, so I had to, like, sign things for that as well, because then they give you anesthesia for that. And you know, everything's happening so fast that I honestly, like, didn't read like the paperwork. I didn't read any of that stuff. I just remember them saying like, you know, basically this is just saying if something bad happens, which it probably won't, then, you know, you're saying that you're not going to hold us liable.
Yeah. Which is so shady that they would, you know, present you with paperwork during such a like compromising.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a better
position. Like how could you be expected to read it when you're in the middle of contractions?
Yeah. But it's just that's how important like liability is.
Yeah.
And the next thing I learned is like the different roles that everyone plays. And so I guess before I thought that the doctor did most of the things. I guess like on TV you see the doctor delivering and, the doctor is the one who does the surgery, and the doctor is the one with the prestige who went to medical school. But the people that I saw the most were the nurses and then the nurses' assistants. And so I had a nurse who was with me for during the contractions. Then I had a nurse who was with me with the actual labor, and delivery, and then I had a nurse that was with me for the recovery. And then the baby has his own nurse too. So like all these and then there's a lactation nurse that helps you if you want to breastfeed. And so what I learned is that nurse, like, you really want a good nurse. So yeah, I mean, a good doctor is good, but like the doctor's only there. My doctor was there for like 45 minutes. The 3 days that I was there, it was the nurses that were around, and the nurses were so helpful. And I honestly think that, like, looking back, is like the nurses just don't get enough credit. The nurses don't get enough recognition. And I don't think that I really understood or valued the job that a nurse has. And I actually think that, like, looking back, if I were ever to go in the medical field and I actually wanted to be with patients, the nursing is the way to go, because I can remember I actually went back and I gave the nurses that worked with me cookies that my mom made, because they helped me so much. Like, they were just like, not only did they take care of me in terms of, like, they actually helped me bathe and helped me walk and helped me go to the bathroom. But when I was really scared and I was telling them, I don't think I can do this. I don't know what to do. I'm really scared. They, like, held my hand and talked to me and told me, like, everything is going to be okay. And so in addition to them doing the medical stuff, they're, like, providing emotional support.
Yeah. They get really slept on.
Yeah. And then I think, like, the final thing that I kind of wanted to touch on is something that we had kind of been talking about in other episodes, especially when we talk about maternal mortality and the higher maternal mortality deaths among Black women in the United States. And so during my C-section, I apparently was bleeding too much. And so my partner was there in the room. I had a lot of medicine, a lot of pain meds, so it was a huge blur. And it wasn't until later that, my partner told me what happened. But I do remember in the recovery room them telling me that I had lost too much blood and I had become, anemic, which is when you lose blood. And which is, being anemic is actually kind of normal after delivery, because after C-section, because it's normal to lose blood. But apparently they were a little concerned because I had lost too much blood. And so my partner told me that during the actual C-section, the doctors were, like, kind of concerned, and they were saying she's losing too much blood. And they asked for the medicine that kind of stops bleeding, and they give it to you in the form of a shot. And my partner said that one of the people there was like, oh, it's not in the room. And he said that they kind of panicked, and he saw people's faces kind of being like, oh shit. And so someone had to leave, and they're like, someone said, you have to go get it right now. And he said that someone, like, ran out to go get it. So apparently the shot medicine that they needed to stop my bleeding wasn't available in the room, so they had to leave me while I was bleeding. And that contributed to me losing more blood than I should have. And it was probably 30 seconds max that someone had to leave to go get the shot. But I'm just thinking, like, in a hospital, we live in a place that has a really good medical center. And in a hospital that actually had the resource, they had the shot, but it just wasn't available to them in the room. And it was just kind of, like, scary to be like, man, that caused me to lose more blood than usual. Thankfully, it didn't lead to long-term consequences, but I can kind of see how that can contribute to other women having, like, a lot more traumatic experiences or a lot more negative consequences. And so I think, like, that experience just kind of showed me that. And they didn't even tell me. Like, they weren't like, oh, no one ever told me, like, oh, there was a little complication. They didn't even tell me. The reason I knew I lost a lot of blood is because the nurses told me. My doctor didn't come in and tell me. The doctor that did the surgery didn't come in and tell me, hey, this is what happened. And that's, going back to your point, the doctor, my OBGYN, unfortunately wasn't on call when I went in labor, so they had another doctor. So there was no communication. So I didn't have the doctor that I had been working with for or been going to for 9 months, I had someone else. And so, all the work that I had in specifically choosing this one doctor to be able to avoid things like this wasn't able to be there when I was giving birth. And so I think that, better communication, if I could go back, I would have really stressed that I don't know, I don't even know how you can fix this, but I just feel like you should be able to. There was that day I saw 3 different doctors because the shift changes. Yeah. And so the first doctor said one thing, the second doctor said another thing, and finally the third doctor is the one that did the surgery. And the nurses, I stayed with the same nurses. And so it's just kind of like, the consistency of having the same nurses and the same nursing assistants was great because they were with me from beginning until almost the end. But seeing so many doctors, it was just kind of like I didn't even know who they were. And so I think overall, just from my experience, I have yet to get an actual, I just got my first bill. And it was for the C-section surgery, and that was $3,000. And after my insurance and everything, I only had to pay $300. But then I just saw that they're going to bill me for the anesthesiologist. And I get billed for every anesthesiologist that I saw, which turns out to be 3. So I get billed for the anesthesiologist that gave me the epidural. The anesthesiologist billed me again when he gave me a refill of my epidural. Then I get billed for the anesthesiologist that was there during the surgery. And then the board of anesthesiologists, I have to pay a fee to them of $25. And so, and it all goes...
Dang, Bo.
Yeah, and so I'm part of mommy blogs, and one of the mommy blogs was a person who said that she wasn't aware of how the anesthesiologist billed, because I thought you only had one, and it turns out I had 3 with 3 separate bills. And she said that she was, they were on such a budget that she had only planned on spending what the insurance had quoted her when she called. And unfortunately, she said that she, isn't going to be able to afford paying the anesthesiologist bill. Because I think for mine, it's like $800 that they billed, but I only have to pay $167. And so thankfully I have insurance, and our insurance isn't that bad.
Do you know who you have?
Yeah, we have Aetna, and I think it's a student insurance, and I think it's...
Oh, that you have that insurance?
Yeah, and I think it's because they don't really assume that students would have babies. Yeah. And so the maternal, benefits are actually really pretty good.
Maybe I should have a baby before I graduate.
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty good compared to... And what's great about us is our plan year is it's the school year, August to August, not January to December. And so I was able to accumulate a lot of... I've been making a lot of payments. So, your insurance covers a percentage, and then you have out-of-pocket costs. And the out-of-pocket cost goes towards this, amount. And then in your policy...
Your deductible?
Well, no, it's separate from your deductible. Your deductible is you pay this much, and then after that deductible is paid, then the insurance starts covering a percentage of it. But your plan also guarantees that you will never pay more than this amount. So for us, it's $4,000, where our plan says, okay, we're always going to cover your services after your deductible, but we promise that you will never have to pay more than $4,000. And so because I had been paying so much for my pregnancy, by now, my out-of-pocket expenses is $200. And so basically I'm going to have to pay less than $1,000 for everything, which is great. And that's because the plan year is from August to August. If it was from January to December, then it technically would start over January 1st. And so for a lot of women, for example, that gave birth December 31st and met their deductible, it started again January 1st. So the insurance is just really shitty. I've read a lot of women talking about their experiences with insurance and the hospital bills, and I even talked to one bill because they start sending you bills the day you come home, And I had to, at the hospital, I remember I was, on the bed with pain meds, calling the insurance, telling them, hey, I had a baby, because part of the, policy states that you have to have pre-authorization, and in order to have pre-authorization, it means you have to let them know that you delivered a baby. And so you actually have to call them and say, hey, I had my baby yesterday at 7:55 a.m. You can't call ahead. You have to call after it's happened. And
literally after you push them out.
Yeah, and they give you 3 days to do it.
Wow.
And so, if you have a C-section, sometimes it takes up to 5 days to get out of the hospital. So, I just remember feeling really shitty and being like, man, I'm on hold in the hospital in a gown, in a lot of pain, letting them know, hey, please pay for my stuff. And, technically, if you don't call them and let them know you had a baby within the time, they have the right to not cover your service. So, even though I had insurance, if I didn't let them know that I had the baby, they technically could come out and say, oh, because you didn't let us know that you had the baby, we're not going to cover you.
Mm. Yeah, our insurance is the biggest scam.
It is.
The biggest scam that we have.
No, it is.
Across, and it's it's not when, dealing with one type is a scam and then the other kind of, work for you to your benefit. No, they're all a scam.
Yeah. No, yeah.
It's car insurance, homeowner insurance, health.
No, it is. And even talking to the insurance, because the baby and I have different insurances, and even doing that was such a hassle, and they're not really helpful, and you talk to so many people, and I don't know, this experience has really taught me that having insurance is really great. I would definitely not be able to pay $30,000, but having insurance does not guarantee that you can't trust your insurance company. So even though they told me this is probably how much you'll pay for your delivery, I didn't trust them.
Yeah.
And with good reason, because it ended up, I ended up having 3 anesthesiologists instead of 1, because when they quote you, they're like, okay, we're just going to assume that the same anesthesiologist is going to do all these 3 things, that you're not going to have an epidural, that you're not going to need anesthesia, that you're just going to have a vaginal delivery, that you're just going to do this. And it's sometimes...
Yeah, best case scenario.
Yeah, best case scenario. And they don't tell you that. They're just okay, and when they gave me the freaking quote, they were like, do you want to make a down payment? And I was like, I'm not going to pay towards anything that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, no, I keep getting all these bills. The bills come separately. I just got my first one, like I said, for the OBGYN. But, the pediatrician bills me. The nurses bill you separately. Like I said, the anesthesiologist bills you. It's just crazy.
What's the experience been like so far with you and him having different insurance?
So in our state, automatically the first 30 days, the baby is billed under your insurance, even if he has a different insurance. It's just, they have to bill it to someone. Mm-hmm. And so what's been difficult is explaining to my insurance that he and the hospital that we don't have the same insurance. Mm-hmm. And so basically what they told me is well, we already billed your insurance company for it. We assumed you were going to add him to your insurance because you have 30 days to add your baby to your insurance. So what I have to do now is I have to have my insurance get a refund and tell them hey, I'm not adding this baby to my insurance. I'm not paying more for this policy. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be going to a different insurance. So my insurance has to get their money back because the hospital, of course, already billed my insurance and my insurance sent them a check. Mm-hmm. And so my insurance has to get their money back, and then the hospital has to bill his new insurance.
Why would they send them a check without
knowing? I know. Because they I don't know. And so, and of course, they told me the insurances don't talk to each other. So it's not I can just say oh, hey, can you send this over? Or tell the hospital, oh, hey, can you just bill the insurance? It's no, it's my job to now send this bill to the new insurance and say, oh, my baby is not on my insurance. They accidentally billed him. This is his bill. Can you cover it?
That's so much work. And the fact that he has bills and he's only a month old.
And it's crazy because they come in his name. So it's he
has mail too.
Yeah, he's only a month old and he already technically has medical debt.
Yeah. Mail coming to his house. It's really crazy.
So I feel pretty privileged in the fact that I already have insurance, and I had the ability to be able to like take the time to call and talk to these insurances and understand what they're telling me and understand the policy and understand my rights and be able to go on the internet and see my even explaining to you like the difference between the deductible and the out of pocket and the, you know, the co-insurance, like all that stuff I had to learn. And I just can't imagine people who don't have the time to be able to read the packets of insurance, and also all the women who don't have insurance, because like you said, one of the points was there's millions of Americans without insurance. And so if I were one of those women who went in there and now I left with $30,000 in debt, I'm starting my family with like that, you know.
And it's like we can't, you know, some folks dismiss this so casually, like, oh, that's just the way it is, or that's the way it has to be. And it isn't. Yeah. It isn't. Like I said at the beginning, there are plenty of countries that have figured this out. Yes. And for whatever reason, the United States refuses, and it's not because we can't. It's because the government just doesn't care. They don't care enough. You know, and so it would make things easier for us all, but because you have all of these insurance companies that, you know, they've got their hands in our government officials' pockets and things, like you can't really, you know, it's like their needs supersede ours, you know, their needs and their wants. So it's not about us, it's about, you know, all of these multi-million-dollar companies. And yeah, so my final like tip would be like for any of you, not just like pregnancy or having a baby, but any procedures, like call, talk, learn, because no one is going to look out for you like you can. And believe me, you can't be like, oh, Becky told me that I only have to pay $20. They don't give a shit if Becky from Aetna told you 2 months ago that you only had to pay $20. What they care about is like, and time again, what I've heard is it's your responsibility to know your policy. Yeah. And so like last week, my partner is self-employed, so he doesn't have health insurance, but he just got it. And I had to, you know, listen. He had a call with the person that was selling him the insurance. I don't know what that person is called, insurance agent, I guess. And I had to, you know, listen in on the call and ask the important questions that he didn't know how to ask. You know, like he had never had insurance, so it was kind of like, you know, he had been paying everything out of pocket, and the insurance like per month is ridiculous. Yeah. You know, and so if you don't have insurance through an employer, trying to get it independently is really expensive. Especially now. Yeah. And then you know, like asking questions like, you know, okay, so what happens if, you know, worst case scenario, I get cancer? Then it's like, okay, you know, we cover it this way. Okay, what if I get diabetes? Well, we cover it this, like, you know, there are all these, like the policies change so much depending on what the ailment is. Yeah. You know, if you have an accident, then it's different. You know, and I mean, it's just it's so sad, and the system is so flawed. So flawed. Yeah. And like, you know, things like therapy and, you know, mental health stuff isn't covered. Yeah. So you have to pay for that just out of pocket. And if you can't afford that, then you're not getting mental health treatment. You know, and so I mean, there's so many inequalities and things, and then we wonder why, you know, our country is in the state that it's in. It's just because, you know, this lack of coverage, this lack of care, you know. Yeah. And what we always, I think just because we live in a country with so many good resources that we're just, you know, if we get sick, it's no problem. But you don't think that, you know, I mean, and I joke about it, but I remember when I got the epidural and they told me like it's gonna run out because I was in labor for 22 hours, and my epidural was about to run out. They're like, you probably have another 30 minutes, and I wasn't anywhere near done. And I remember it for the split second thinking, fuck, that's like another charge. And, you know, ultimately I got the refill, but I just remember thinking like how sad it is to be in a country where that's your first thought. Yeah, it's like you're in so much pain. Yeah, you hesitate a little bit. Yeah, to be like, oh man, and then especially for, you know, at least I have insurance. I knew that would be covered,
But for all the people, you know, when I there's a point in my life where I didn't have insurance, and I remember like that would be a really real thought where I might consider not getting something because of the cost. To be like, well, that you know, that's $500 I can save, and so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to do that without medicine. So yeah, no, definitely a new experience. I mean, ultimately it was great, you know, because I had a baby and we were both healthy, but I mean,
and he's great. He's been here the whole time.
Yeah, you can kind of hear him a little during the segment, but you know, I am getting a PhD, and it was fucking hard to understand my policy. So I definitely think that it's a little intentional in the ways that they make it difficult for people, for most of us, to be able to understand what we are, how we're covered, and they kind of make it harder for us to be able to understand our benefits and how everything works. And the hospitals and the staff can't really help you, because I would even ask my doctor about my benefits, and she'd be like, sorry, I don't even know that stuff, like that. I don't deal with that stuff. You should call your insurance company. And it's just kind of like, okay. So
yeah, actually, when I forgot about this, but when I was speaking with the new therapist, she asked me what kind of insurance I have. I said Aetna, right? I sent her all the insurance information. She was like, okay, I'm going to send it over to the billing department. She writes me back and is like, okay, good news. Like, you don't have a copay, so everything is covered or whatever. Like, you're covered. Then texts me the next day and says, oh, I just heard from my billing department. They had me under the wrong company, so you actually aren't covered, but you can pay for the session out of pocket. And I was like, oh, I'm a student. Like, I can't afford that. I'm sorry. And she said some other stuff, and then the next day wrote me back and said, oh, actually, you are covered. Like, we can keep... And it was just all this back and forth, and I'm like, what is your billing department doing?
Yeah, I mean, they probably don't know either.
Yeah, I'm like, what is all of this back and forth and back and forth? Like, there's just no... there's just no clarity at all, no transparency. It's all over the place. Nobody knows what's going on. Not even the insurance companies know. And I feel like policies change all the time. I mean, golly. It's a shame. It's a shame.
It is. Yeah, it is.
But, I mean, hopefully... I mean, we just wanted to use this episode especially after Zelma's experience. Because, I mean, I had no idea. Like, I don't plan on having a baby anytime soon, but it's nice to know, when I do decide to have a baby, like, what I'll have to pay, what the actual costs will be. Yeah, the fact that the baby will have bills. Like, I did not know that, and so I'm sure that there are other folks out there that didn't know either. Or if you did know and you have a different experience, or you have the same experience and you want to write in and vent to us. Let us know. You can email us at woke.ishpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at wokeishpodcast. And you can follow us on Twitter at wokeishtalk. Those are all of our social infos. And yes, thank you again for listening to the first episode of the second season.
Yes.
And if you went back and listened, we really appreciate that. Don't hesitate to let us know what you think. Again, if you have any shout outs or just anything you want to let us know about that we haven't discussed, hit us up. We are a friendly bunch. We, again, want this to be a community.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.